Men who truly understand a woman's body don't rush, don't dominate. They connect, they listen, communicate, and prioritize her pleasure with intention and care. These men make intimacy feel safe, sensual, and unforgettable. It's not about performance, it's about presence. And men who do this, they're built different, emotionally, mentally, and sexually. When it comes to intimacy, too many men believe their worth is measured by performance, how long they last, how intense their moves are, or how many positions they try. But the truth is, performance means very little without presence. What sets a man apart isn't how much he does, but how deeply he understands the woman he's with. A man who seeks to understand a woman's body, her rhythm, her energy, and her unspoken signals is playing an entirely different game. He's not performing to impress, he's present to connect. Understanding starts before anything physical happens. It's in the way he listens when she speaks, the way he pays attention to her mood, and how he reads the room without needing to be told. This type of man is emotionally intelligent. He knows that a woman's body doesn't exist in isolation. It is deeply connected to her emotions, her mind, and the trust she feels in the moment. Without understanding these layers, even the most physically skilled man will miss the mark. In intimacy, built different men slow down. They don't come in with a rehearsed routine. They come in with curiosity. They want to learn her body, not compare her to past experiences. They notice how she responds to touch, to tone, to timing. They adapt. They listen not just with their ears, but with their hands, their eyes, and their energy. Because they understand that every woman is different, and her pleasure can't be unlocked through ego-driven technique. It takes empathy, attention, and patience. These men also understand that pleasure is not linear. It's not a race to a finish line. It ebbs and flows, and what matters is creating an environment where she feels safe to surrender. That kind of safety doesn't come from pressure or expectations. It comes from attunement. From knowing when to go slow, when to pause, when to intensify, and when to just hold space. This awareness doesn't come from textbooks or porn. It comes from genuine interest in who she is, not just what she can offer. Men who seek understanding over performance don't just care about whether she climaxed. They care about how she felt. Did she feel cherished, respected, and adored? Did she feel seen? Did she feel free to express her desires, to guide, to be vocal, to let go without fear of judgment? These questions matter deeply to him because he's not just trying to be good in bed. He's trying to be a deeply satisfying partner in every sense of the word. And what's most powerful is that women feel this difference. It's not something that can be faked. When a man approaches intimacy with understanding, his presence lingers long after the moment ends. He's remembered not for what he did, but for how he made her feel, wanted, known, and fully accepted. That is what makes him truly built different. Emotional connection is the invisible thread that turns physical intimacy from an act into an experience. When a man truly connects with a woman emotionally, everything changes. The way he touches her, the way she responds, and the depth of pleasure they both feel. It's not just about chemistry or attraction, it's about safety, trust, and presence. Emotional connection allows a woman to open up fully, not just with her body, but with her heart. And when she feels emotionally safe, her body follows naturally. That's when intimacy becomes more than just physical. It becomes soul-stirring. A man who builds emotional connection doesn't wait until the lights are off. He invests time and energy into truly knowing her, how she feels, what she values, what makes her feel secure. He listens without rushing, speaks with intention, and shows her that she matters outside of the bedroom. This kind of emotional groundwork builds trust, and trust is the gateway to uninhibited intimacy. When a woman feels emotionally held, her guard drops, and she's able to explore her sensuality without fear, without hesitation, without pretending. There's a noticeable difference when emotional connection is present. The way he touches her isn't mechanical, it's intuitive. He's in tune with her energy, not just her body. He knows when she needs closeness before she says it. He senses her shifts, her pauses, her pleasure points. That kind of attunement only comes from being emotionally invested, not from memorizing techniques. Physical intimacy, in this context, becomes an extension of their emotional rhythm. It flows naturally, with no performance, no pressure. For many women, emotional arousal comes before physical arousal. She needs to feel emotionally aligned, understood, and accepted before her body fully responds. A man who gets this doesn't rush past the emotional landscape. He embraces it. He holds space for her softness, her vulnerability, her expression. That deep presence alone can ignite her body in ways that physical touch alone never could. She's not just responding to the moment, she's responding to being deeply seen and emotionally valued. The beauty of emotional connection is that it creates a foundation that transcends the moment. It doesn't fade when the intimacy ends. It lingers in the way she feels about herself in his presence. A woman remembers how a man made her feel, especially when that feeling awakened something sacred in her. She feels bonded, nourished, and safe to return to that space again and again. Built different men understand this truth. They don't separate emotional intimacy from physical desire. They fuse the two. They know that emotional presence amplifies everything: sensitivity, pleasure, and satisfaction. And they don't just seek connection for what it gives them. They seek it because they respect the fullness of the woman they're with. That kind of emotional intelligence makes every physical touch more meaningful, more powerful, and far more memorable. There's a quiet strength in slowness that many men overlook. In a world that glorifies speed, intensity, and performance, moving slowly, especially in intimacy, is a rare form of power. Men who understand this don't rush to the end. They savor the process. They realize that every touch, every glance, every breath carries weight. And when those moments are stretched and savored, the connection deepens in a way that hurried encounters never reach. Slowness isn't about hesitation or lack of confidence. It's about control, presence, and intention. A man who moves slowly is showing that he's not in a race to prove something. He's not chasing a goal or a climax. He's completely immersed in the moment, in her, in the connection they're creating together. This kind of presence speaks volumes. It says, "You are worth my time. You are worth every second of this." For a woman, slowness is more than just sensual. It's emotional reassurance. It tells her that her pleasure isn't being rushed, that her body is being respected, that her energy is being read and responded to in real time. It gives her space to feel, to respond, to trust. And in that space, her arousal builds naturally, layer by layer, breath by breath, until the experience becomes deeply fulfilling on every level. Slowness creates anticipation. It turns a simple kiss into a spark, a gentle touch into a fire, and a look into a deep connection. Every moment is expanded. Every sensation is amplified. Built different men know this. They understand that pleasure doesn't live in speed. It lives in awareness, in how present they are, in how attuned they become to her breathing, her body language, her subtle reactions. They allow themselves to be led by her responses, not by a preconceived plan. Moving slowly also shows maturity. It reflects a man who isn't ruled by urgency, who doesn't need to dominate or control the situation. Instead, he guides with patience and attentiveness. He makes her feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. And in that safety, she can let go, fully and freely. There's nothing performative about it. It's real, raw, and deeply human. This kind of experience stays with a woman. She remembers how her body responded, how her heart felt held, how time seemed to stand still. She remembers the softness, the patience, the power of being unrushed. It's not something she forgets easily, because so few men offer it. Most are too caught up in trying to do more, be more, impress more. But the man who moves slowly, with purpose and care, doesn't have to try so hard, because everything he does speaks for itself. Slow is not weak. Slow is not boring. Slow is power. It's the mark of a man who understands that real intimacy isn't about reaching the finish line. It's about making every step count. And for the woman on the receiving end, that kind of experience is nothing short of unforgettable. Consent isn't just about saying yes or no. It's about creating a space where both people feel respected, heard, and valued. And when that foundation is in place, intimacy becomes deeper, freer, and more pleasurable. Built different men know that asking for consent isn't a formality. It's an act of care. It shows emotional maturity, empathy, and a high level of self-awareness. These men understand that consent is not only necessary, it's incredibly sexy. There is nothing more attractive than a man who checks in, who listens, who observes, and who respects boundaries without question. He doesn't push, manipulate, or assume. He doesn't interpret silence as a green light or use pressure to get his way. Instead, he asks. He invites. He opens the door for mutual exploration. And that kind of safety does something powerful. It allows a woman to surrender without fear. When a woman feels safe, her body responds differently. She can let go of tension. She can stop performing. She can be present. That level of presence leads to deeper intimacy, heightened sensations, and emotional connection. She's no longer guarding herself. She's opening up fully and willingly. And that's what consent creates, a space where real passion and authenticity can unfold. Men who value consent also understand the power of enthusiastic participation. They're not looking for compliance. They're looking for connection. They want to know she wants to be there, not just that she agreed. They want to feel her energy, her eagerness, her fire. And when that kind of mutual desire is present, the experience becomes magnetic. Consent becomes part of the dance. It's in the communication, the eye contact, the body language. It enhances everything, not limits it. Asking, "Is this okay?" or saying, "Let me know if you're comfortable with this," isn't awkward. It's incredibly intimate. It shows that a man is attuned, that he's paying attention, that he respects her autonomy. And this doesn't kill the mood, it builds it, because trust is the foundation of desire. The more a woman trusts a man, the more she feels free to express herself fully, and the more pleasure she experiences in return. Consent also continues throughout the experience. It's not a one-time check-in, it's ongoing. It's reading her body, listening to her sounds, responding to her cues. It's knowing that things can change, and being okay with that. Built different men adapt. They don't take offense. They take responsibility. They understand that intimacy is a two-way experience, not a performance or conquest. In the end, the men who understand and value consent create unforgettable experiences. Not just because of what they do, but because of how they make a woman feel, safe, respected, and empowered. That kind of man stands out. He's not driven by ego or entitlement. He's grounded, emotionally intelligent, and deeply aware. And in a world where too many still treat intimacy as something to get, he approaches it as something to share, with care, presence, and integrity. Men who are truly built different take the time to learn the art of female pleasure, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. They don't operate from assumptions or outdated beliefs. They understand that every woman is unique, and her pleasure isn't something to conquer. It's something to explore with patience and curiosity. These men treat intimacy like a language they're dedicated to learning fluently, not something they skim through just to satisfy themselves. They recognize that female pleasure is layered. It's not as simple or immediate as flipping a switch. It requires presence, attention, and genuine interest. These men listen, not just to words, but to body language, breathing, and subtle shifts in energy. They pay attention to what brings her ease, what sparks excitement, what makes her eyes close in surrender. And they never assume they know it all. In fact, they welcome being taught, guided, and corrected because they understand that ego has no place in intimacy. They also educate themselves. They're not afraid to read, to ask, to explore real information beyond what media or porn has shown them. They learn about anatomy, the clitoris, the G-spot, the importance of blood flow and arousal time. But more than that, they learn how the female mind plays a role in her arousal. They understand that safety, trust, and emotional connection are just as important, if not more, than technique. They approach pleasure holistically, knowing that a woman's senses and emotions are deeply interwoven with how she experiences touch. These men don't rush to make her come. They understand that pleasure is not a goal to achieve, but a journey to experience together. They enjoy the build-up, the tease, the connection, and the chemistry. They know that foreplay isn't something you do for 5 minutes before the main event. To them, foreplay is the entire vibe. It starts with how he looks at her, how he touches her during the day, how he communicates. It's not an act, it's an atmosphere. What also makes them different is their selflessness. They're not focused only on receiving. They give with intention. They take pride in the way a woman melts under their hands, how she relaxes into her body, how she blossoms in response to being truly seen and felt. That sense of giving is not performative, it's sincere, and because of that sincerity, the woman is able to relax and enjoy herself without feeling objectified or pressured. Built different men never stop learning. Even with a partner they've known for years, they remain curious, open, and engaged. They evolve with her, adapt to her changes, and keep deepening the experience. For them, intimacy is a shared art, and female pleasure is not a mystery. It's a masterpiece they're committed to understanding, and that mindset alone sets them apart in ways that are unforgettable, not just in the bedroom, but in the way they carry themselves as lovers and as men. True intimacy isn't about dominance, ego, or showing off. It's about connection, sensitivity, and skill. Built different men know that pleasure doesn't come from force or bravado. It comes from intention, from presence, and from understanding the power of every part of the body, not just the obvious ones. These men use their hands and their mouth as tools of connection, not control. They aren't afraid to slow down, explore, and express affection through touch and taste. And most importantly, they do it without needing to be praised, because it's not about their ego, it's about her experience. Hands can speak volumes. A gentle stroke down her back, fingers exploring softly along her thighs, the pressure of his palm against her hips. These moments communicate desire, respect, and attention. Hands, when used intentionally, can awaken parts of a woman that words and actions alone can't reach. They become extensions of his focus. He doesn't grope or grab. He glides, he explores, he listens through his fingertips. A built different man understands that a woman's body is not something to conquer, but something to worship. And worship is slow, mindful, and deliberate. The same goes for his mouth. He's not afraid to use it to kiss, to whisper, to taste. He kisses her neck, her stomach, her inner thighs, not because it's a checklist, but because he enjoys every inch of her. His mouth is a source of affection, heat, and intention. He pays attention to her reactions and adjusts, not to prove himself, but to stay connected. He knows that this isn't just about bringing her physical pleasure, it's about helping her feel safe enough to release, to express, to truly enjoy. And what's key here is that he does all this without ego. He doesn't perform like he's in a competition. He doesn't seek validation or praise for how good he is. He's not in it to feed his pride. He's in it to create a shared experience of pleasure. His joy comes from seeing her body respond, from hearing her breathe deeper, from feeling her relax into his hands and mouth. That response is his reward, and it has nothing to do with pride. It has everything to do with presence. This kind of man doesn't view oral or manual stimulation as a favor. He sees it as essential, as sacred. He doesn't shy away or make it transactional. He's attentive, generous, and committed to understanding what pleases her. And the more she feels his sincerity, the more she opens up to the experience. Built different men know that ego has no place in real intimacy. They understand that using their hands and mouth is not just about technique, it's about emotional intelligence, patience, and a willingness to learn. And when a woman encounters a man like this, it's unforgettable, not because he was trying to prove anything, but because he made her feel deeply desired, thoroughly understood, and fully satisfied. What happens after intimacy is just as important, if not more, as what happens during. Built different men understand this truth. They know that real connection doesn't end the moment the physical act is over. In fact, it deepens in those quiet, vulnerable moments that follow. Post-intimacy care is not a bonus, it's a necessity. And the men who prioritize it leave a lasting impression, not because of what they did, but because of how they made her feel afterward. These men don't roll over or rush to get dressed. They stay, they hold, they touch gently. They create a space where a woman feels emotionally safe to stay in the softness of the moment. That space allows her to feel seen, nurtured, and valued, not just as a body, but as a whole person. And in that presence, the intimacy continues. It's no longer about arousal or climax. It's about connection, reassurance, and affection. There's a certain kind of magic in the way a man pulls a woman close after they've shared something intimate. It's in the way he kisses her forehead, strokes her hair, or simply breathes with her in silence. It's subtle, but powerful. It sends a message. I'm still here. You matter to me beyond the physical. That message has the power to transform a fleeting moment into something meaningful and memorable. Post-intimacy care also includes communication. A man who is emotionally intelligent will ask, "How do you feel? Are you okay?" Not because he doubts himself, but because he genuinely cares. He checks in with her, not for validation, but for connection. He wants to know how the experience was for her, what she enjoyed, and how she's feeling in her body and heart. That openness builds trust. It shows maturity. It reinforces the idea that she is not alone in the experience. Built different men also understand the importance of aftercare when emotions are heightened. For many women, intimacy brings up vulnerability, even subconscious emotions that they might not fully understand in the moment. A man who holds space for that, without rushing to fix it or escape it, shows his strength. He listens, he reassures, and he remains present without judgment. Even the small things count. Bringing her water, offering a warm towel, saying something gentle, lighthearted, or kind. These little gestures go a long way. They show that he's attentive, thoughtful, and genuinely invested in her comfort and well-being. What's most powerful about post-intimacy care is that it anchors the entire experience in trust. It becomes a full circle of giving, receiving, and mutual presence. A woman may forget specific details, but she will never forget how she felt in those quiet moments after. That is what separates a man who is simply physically skilled from one who is emotionally connected. The latter knows that real intimacy doesn't end with the climax. It evolves into something deeper. And that kind of care, that kind of presence, it stays with her long after the night is over. Men who are built different don't approach intimacy passively. They take full responsibility for the experience. They understand that their role isn't just to participate, but to lead with care, intention, and awareness. They don't assume things will simply unfold naturally or rely on their partner to guide every moment. Instead, they show up fully, aware of the emotional, physical, and mental layers that make up a meaningful connection. They take ownership of the energy they bring, the pace they set, and the presence they maintain. This responsibility doesn't come from control or dominance. It comes from emotional intelligence. These men understand that a woman's comfort, safety, and enjoyment are deeply influenced by how intentional he is. From the first touch to the last breath of the moment, he remains tuned in. He's not just reacting. He's actively co-creating an experience that's mutually fulfilling. And when something doesn't feel right or doesn't go as planned, he doesn't deflect blame or go silent. He addresses it with maturity, clarity, and grace. Built different men also take the initiative in preparing for the experience. They don't just show up, they think ahead. They set the environment, ensure privacy, cleanliness, and comfort. They think about her needs as much as their own. This attention to detail is a form of respect, a quiet but powerful way of saying, "You're worth the effort." It makes a woman feel cared for before anything even begins, and that emotional ease sets the tone for deeper physical connection. These men are also proactive about communication. They ask questions, they listen without defensiveness, and they welcome feedback. They don't assume that what worked before will always work. They remain curious. If a woman is hesitant, nervous, or unsure, they don't push her forward. They pause and meet her where she is. They prioritize her readiness and her comfort over their own expectations. And if something is unclear, they ask. They don't operate from ego. They operate from empathy. Taking responsibility also means showing up after the moment ends. If there are emotional aftereffects, if she feels exposed or uncertain, they stay grounded. They don't disappear. They don't detach. They continue to hold space, offering reassurance, conversation, or simply presence. That consistency builds trust. It tells her, "You're not just here for a moment of pleasure. You're here for connection, safety, and respect." And most importantly, they take pride in how they make her feel, not just physically, but emotionally. They want her to walk away from the experience feeling valued, respected, and cherished, not just satisfied, but seen. That level of responsibility requires emotional maturity, self-awareness, and care. It's rare. And that's why women remember these men, not for flashy moves or scripted lines, but for how intentional and present they were throughout the entire experience. That kind of man doesn't just leave an impression, he leaves a lasting impact. The men who truly stand out, the ones women never forget, aren't defined by physical technique or performance. They are defined by their depth, their presence, and their emotional intelligence. These are the men who slow down, who seek understanding over ego, who value connection more than conquest. They communicate with their hands, their mouth, and their heart. They prioritize consent, pleasure, and post-intimacy care. They don't treat a woman's body as a challenge to overcome, but as a sacred space to respect, explore, and honor. These men are intentional in every touch, every word, every breath. They take responsibility not just for their actions, but for the emotional and physical experience they co-create. And because of that, they awaken something powerful in a woman: trust, desire, freedom, and deep connection. These are the men who are truly built different, not because of what they do, but because of who they are while doing it.